Hi, I'm Karyn Parsons. I played Hilary Banks on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on Gogoodman.com.au.
I read that your mother was a librarian, so where do you think you caught the acting bug from?
Oh, when I was little, I would spend hours in the library while she worked, hanging out in the library. And that's where I first was introduced to some books they had called plays, and they were little compilations of 2 or 3 plays. And I would read through all of them and imagine playing all the parts, and I would check those out all the time. I loved all the plays, little playbooks or little short plays. And then I think we had a bookmobile come to school, and there was a little book called Small Plays for You and a Friend, and it was for little kids, and it had props and everything. It was all laid out so you could put on your own show, and I would do those shows, and I got hooked when I was about 6. And there was still kind of a library association in a way.
So you just discovered these books yourself going through the library?
Mm-hmm. I did. I mean, and then of course I watched people. I watched Betty Davis, and growing up I watched Jodie Foster, who was a kid actor. I had to watch every single thing she was in. I had to see everything she was in, and a few times. So those things also influenced it.
And I read your mother used to read you stories of African-American accomplishment with you at a young age. What impact, in hindsight, do you think these stories had on your career path? Did they have any impact on you?
Well, yeah, it was when I was older that she would actually tell me these stories, and she'd share these stories with me that she came across at work, because she headed the Black Resource Center, so they had lots of interesting information, Black African-American stories, Black stories that we just didn't hear that often. And so she told me the story of Henry Box Brown, a slave who literally mailed himself to freedom in a box. And I thought that was just outrageous, and I couldn't believe I hadn't heard it. And that was the impetus for Sweet Blackberry, for me to start the organization ultimately. But it didn't have, it didn't affect other things, I don't think, in terms of my acting career or anything. It was just later on, those things really stayed with me. And when I started thinking about my own children, when I was pregnant with my daughter in particular, my first child, I started to think a lot more about my responsibility as a parent and having to supplement her education, and then it started to drive it home for me. And then that made that turn towards Sweet Blackberry.
So can you go into a bit more detail about the story you remember? Is there one in particular that you remember from back then?
Well, definitely the one that made the largest impact was the Henry Box Brown story. This was a man who he had been a slave. I ended up, after hearing the story from her, looking up his memoir, his narrative, and I read that myself. And it was a fascinating and sad story. Somebody who's he got married at some point, had children, but then one day he came home and they had all been sold away while he was gone, and that by that time he couldn't take it anymore, and he was willing to risk his life by having himself nailed into a box and being shipped from Virginia to Pennsylvania, going all these different kind of routes, and by boat and train and wagon to get to this destination, and hopefully he'd still be alive when he got there. But I just thought that story was remarkable, that happened to a real person. And then I found it really remarkable that we don't all know about him. Like, why doesn't everybody know about Henry Box Brown? That was probably really the biggest impact on me.
And through high school, you pursued acting a little bit in various plays and musical. When did it become a realistic career option for you, do you think?
I think when I got an agent, I grew up in California, Los Angeles. So, if I had grown up in New York, I probably would have gone more toward a theater route. I wouldn't have been thinking the way that I did, but because I was in LA, I was in a class, at a workshop where an agent was present and saw me do some work that he was really interested, and he told the acting coach to have her call me. And I didn't call him because I thought, because he was in a division that was older than I was. It was an adult division, and I was still really young. And so I didn't take it seriously, and I didn't call him. And then a couple years later, he also knew a photographer that I had been referred to by my acting coach, and he saw my pictures there, and he said, "Why won't this girl call me?" And she said, and the photographer said, he asked, "Why won't you call?" So I finally called him, and by this time I think I was old enough that I was in his division, and so he immediately started setting me out on things, and I started getting work, and that's how it happened. It kind of happened a little bit kind of fast in that way.
And an interesting thing I read is that you decided to study film after you'd already got your big break on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. What was the thought process behind this move as opposed to studying film and then pursuing your career with a degree under your belt?
I don't understand. I was acting before studying film. What do you mean? Like
I think I read that you went to, was it NYU?
Film. Yeah.
And studied film there.
But that was right. That was just a different interest at that point because I'd always acted, but I was interested in checking out directing and working behind the scenes, working in a different way, learning about that. I had, I was writing, and I had stories I was interested in seeing happen, and I didn't know exactly which way what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to write or produce or direct or what. But so I went to go do that and learn that. It was to me, it felt very different from what I had been doing. Not related at all, except that the a lot of people were getting so nervous all the time, and I thought that was kind of funny because I said, wait until you're on a real job. When somebody's paying you, then you'll be nervous. You should have reason to be nervous. But when you're paying them to be here and learn, you don't have to be so nervous. You can, just learn. Just learn what you're doing. So
that was pushing more of an interest in behind the scenes after you'd already been pretty successful on the screen.
Right.
So, I guess, like you said, it happened pretty quickly. You got into the acting industry pretty quickly, but as I mentioned, your big break was on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. How did you find out about the role as Hilary Banks? It's one of my favourite shows. And what was the audition process?
My agent sent me out on it. It was, I went out on lots of auditions at the time. I was always going out on all kinds of things, and so I went in, and nobody there knew me from anything. So I met with the casting director's assistant, and then I met with the casting director, and then I met with the writers, and then I met with, they kept calling me back. And they called me back to read for the producers, and they called me back to read for Quincy Jones, and then they called me back to read for the studio, and then they called me back to read for the network. And when you go to read for the network, everyone's in the room. It's building up. It's more and more people, and by the time you get to that point, it's pretty intense. You're in a room just packed with people, and it's going to be the last audition. The decision will be made. You know that it's going to be made on that day. And it's, in that case, and often it's down to you and one other person at that time. And in this case, it was down to me and one other actress, and we had to stand outside and kind of with each other, hang out with each other. And it's a pretty crazy process. It's really, you get really nervous, but I ended up managing to have fun, and I'm glad I did because I think it came across and it went well.
As I mentioned, I was a huge fan of the show. It's one of my favourite sitcoms from the 90s. Can you go through each actor and just describe what they were like on set and how they've grown since then? We know that James Avery unfortunately passed away at the start of the year. Was he kind of a big role model to you on set?
He was tremendously, and I think I realized that more. I mean, I guess I always knew, but yeah, he was such a good friend, and he was such a good friend, and I mean, he was so kind of, it's so funny to say, but larger than life. He really was a big personality. And after the show was over, I ended up getting to spend a lot of time with James. So he was just a really great friend. I think in terms of everyone, Will is just like he seems. He's really got a really great attitude all the time, very positive, very direct, and very optimistic, I think, but not in a fool's way, in a kind of he doesn't have to be bad. You can make it what you want. He's just very, very positive and very willful, and very good energy. I think that translated to everyone, and kind of set the tone on the set, because we really had a great time. We were crazy about each other. I mean, we were always laughing and playing and laughing and having intense conversations. Alfonso Ribeiro and I were very close on the show. He was very much like my brother, and we lived close by. I deliberately got a house nearby where he got a house, because I saw where he was living, and I wanted to be kind of close to where he was. So we were very tight. Tatiana was like having a little sister. Every summer I was afraid that she was going to have grown up and outgrown me or something, and suddenly not wanted anything to do with me. And then we get back to work, and she was my sweet Tatiana again, and she's a member. She's on the board of Sweet Blackberry now. But she's just a wonderful woman. It was a really great group. We were very, very fortunate. Joe Marcel is hilarious, dry, witty Brit. Just great people. Daphne's incredibly warm and generous with her time, and just very calm and relaxing presence. Really good people.
I guess the hardest part, or one of the hardest parts for a fan when a main actor passes away, is that we won't get to see a full reunion and feel that nostalgia again. Is that part of the grieving process for a co-star, or is it more of a personal thing, being a co-star?
For me, it's personal. I didn't have the perspective that everyone else did. I wasn't watching the shows that way. I was experiencing being with these people and going through something life-changing for all of us. It was a life-changing moment for all of us. So we experienced something monumental in our lives. So that really, not only are you playing house and pretending to be a family every day for 5 days out of the week for 6 years, and even during the summers you're having to do things with each other and promotional things and weekends. So you really start to feel like it. But on top of it, you're going through something that's very special. So we're very much like family. Whenever we see each other, it's like we pick up where we left off. Everyone has a very familial relationship. It's not just like friends. We're more than that to each other, I'm happy to say. And so James passing was like having, family member die for me. It was very much like having, I can't say it's like having my father die, but I can only imagine. It certainly felt like having my father die, or like it could be to have my father. It was very, 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 very hard. I loved him very much.
The show portrayed a lot of controversial issues throughout its 6 seasons. For example, separated parents, guns, drug use, theft, moving out of home, etc. There was a few others there as well. Was there one episode or storyline that connected with you back then as a young woman?
I think an episode that connected with me. Because Hilary was so different from me, it's hard for me to I couldn't look at other people's situations the way audiences did because, I had the relationship I did with the real life actors. So, it probably would be something, it would only be if it was me acting in it as Hilary. And Hilary and I were so different. I don't think I came upon anything that she went through that felt like it rang true with me. Simply because I could not be more different from that girl.
I guess that's a good thing.
I think it is. I think it is. I hope.
So then, what are some of your favorite memories from your time on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Oh gosh, there was so much. It's not like there are particular moments. There are particular moments that were funny and things that happened, but we went to work every day. I went to work every day looking forward to seeing everybody. I went to looking forward to going to work every day, which is just crazy. We were incredibly lucky. We like to hang out after work with each other. We went to lunch together every day. We were I laugh at now. I think about it. It's very funny to me. We wanted to go to lunch together every day. We wanted every Friday after the show to all hang out together. We really, really liked each other. So it was really a constant thing. I have some moments. There was a time that Will, because of a line in the script that said Dara can fit a whole orange in her mouth, and Will thought, they kept changing the line. Dara can tie a cherry stem with her tongue, or Dara can do this, Dara can do that. And so the writers were having fun with this one line all week. Finally, the line became Dara can fit a whole orange in her mouth, and Will ran over to the craft service table and grabbed an orange and shoved it and tried just shoving it as hard as he could, trying to fit the whole thing in his mouth. So we're looking at him like, what's wrong with you? He finally got the whole orange in his mouth, and for half a second, there was this moment of triumph across his eyes, which was very quickly replaced by sheer panic.
That would have been brilliant. A whole orange. That's bigger than the size of a fist.
I don't know how he did it. I don't remember how he got it out. I just remember that it was so funny. Because he was so proud for a second, and then he was like, oh my God, what have I done?
Did he obviously he got it out okay?
Obviously he got it out.
Yeah.
But that was memorable. It makes me cry still. It's so funny. Yeah, so we had fun times. I remember James all of a sudden screaming and pointing off stage and going, ah! And Will had mooned him off stage. Mooning is, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what mooning is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd mooned him off stage. And that was funny. It was silly stuff. We'd run around. I remember Janet, our first mom, Janet, one of the prop guys, Louie and I, we played a joke on her, and he gave me a breakaway vase, one of the that you can just break, you can shatter. And so he replaced it with the one on the mantle on the set. And we were all waiting around, and I was playing with the vase, and Janet came up to me and was saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Put that back. And I was being really silly with the vase, and she was telling me to stop. So I started running away from her, and she started chasing me. We were just being very silly. And she chased me and chased me and chased me, and I made her think that she made me drop it and break it. It was shattering, and she ran away from me. I didn't do it. Like a little kid. I didn't do it. It felt like she had made me do it. She panicked, but she didn't know we had set her up. And we told her later. It was very funny. But we were just goofy. We were having fun. We were being silly. It was great.
And you've made a lot of cameo appearances in other shows. Do you think you were most happy when you had the, I guess, financial security of being on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as opposed to doing one or two episodes of different shows here and there?
Oh, well, I don't know. The financial security, I wasn't really thinking about it from a financial security perspective at the time, that's for sure. I was just, when I got Fresh Prince, I was happy to get the job. shocked to get the paycheck, which is really small compared to how TV goes now, because since then Friends happened and all the paychecks went through the roof. But to me, it still seemed like, wow, sure beat my hostessing job that I was at. But then, I wasn't really thinking of it like that when I went from the show to smaller parts. I wasn't really thinking about it that way.
Did you ever get typecast after The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, after playing Hilary,
Sure.
I guess, to a T?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there are people that wouldn't see me for parts because they said, we know what she does. Nope, they wouldn't let me in the door. That happened quite a bit, but, I always say the thing is I also had a lot of doors open for me that never would have opened. So, everything's always got a trade-off. I was better off for having done the show, really, I think. And it's not like, if I hadn't done this show and played that part, I could have, it's like, well, I don't mind that. It's like a backhanded compliment. I don't mind it,
It means you played a part really, really well.
Yeah, I guess so.
And you've been a mum since 2003. How has motherhood, I guess, changed you? Would you recommend the entertainment industry to your kids when they grow up a little bit?
No.
Not at all?
No, not at all. Not that I have anything against acting. I don't have anything against acting or the arts and your music or anything. I'm actually in favor of all of that. It's the industry is actually, that's the part I'm not crazy about, is the industry. I think can be because that's a different thing. That's a machine. That's a business, and that's about who sells and who's on top and all this other kind of stuff that has nothing to do with art or music or acting. So no, I wouldn't. In that way, I wouldn't encourage them to be a part of that. I would rather that if they loved acting, that they really worked on being a good actor and found that joy and did things that brought them that, but they certainly didn't rely on the industry to bring them joy, because that's a different machine. Do
you regret going after an acting career, or is it something you think of fondly? Obviously, you had fun on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Do you wish you would have done something else instead, or are you happy that you've had that experience through Hollywood?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I had a great time, and like I said, I wanted to act since I was 6, and I did, I acted on that. I acted on other things as well, but I really had a great time. I don't have any regrets about that.
And the thing I found most interesting while researching you was that you've kind of come, I guess, full circle from listening to stories from your mother about African American success and achievement. And as you said, you tell these stories now to more children today through Sweet Blackberry, which is your organisation. Can you tell us a bit more about Sweet Blackberry and what you do and how it was founded and things like that?
Yeah, the mission of Sweet Blackberry is to bring little-known stories of African American achievement to kids through various forms of media, but mainly through animated films. We have these single narrator, lightly animated films. They're more like picture books come to life about real people that you just don't hear about. And I think it's really important. In the schools, we only learn about a handful of stories of Black people in history, and it's really unbalanced and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think it would benefit the children and our society so much if we not only didn't lose these stories because they risk being lost, but we also got a more realistic, balanced perspective of our history. If we were able to see, like, Black person invented this, or a Black person was able to manage to do this, and all these different accomplishments and achievements, and I think overcoming obstacles. These are all really great lessons for kids, as well as the historical value of that and the contributions that people made. All of that's very important, and so that's what the mission is to get these stories to children and do it in an engaging and fun way.
Why do you think you're so passionate about this?
Well, I think partially probably has a lot to do with having kids and seeing the need for it. I think when I started it, I was really excited, like I said, by the story of Henry Box Brown, and I just thought it was a great idea. But the more I've lived with it and it's grown, I've discovered more and more stories, and I think I'm more and more surprised that that most people don't know about so many of these incredible people from history and their achievements, and there are such great lessons for kids to learn that I think would help with their self-esteem and boost confidence and make them realize what they're capable of, and looking at challenges in a different way and going, this could be an opportunity for greatness, because that's what's happened to so many other people that came before me, that they were faced with, how do I do this? This is blocking me. I can't do it. I'm black, or I'm, whatever is this obstacle. And then they find a way. People, I think perseverance and determination are really important things to teach kids as well. So, I don't know. It's just something that's, as I've lived with it, it's become something that's been stronger and stronger in me. And also I'm seeing the need for it, that it's not there, that people aren't doing it. We've just kind of got used to Black history being this little boutique history, and we celebrate once a year, and that just isn't enough. That's just not enough, and it's not accurate. It's everyone's history.
And Tatiana Ali, you mentioned, obviously played Ashley on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and she's on your board of directors at Sweet Blackberry. What's it like working with her in a completely different setting? I read that she does a lot of campaigning for the black community and even worked with Barack Obama on his campaign trail. How has she changed from the 11-year-old girl you used to know back on set?
Well, she's always been brilliant, so it's really no surprise. It's just kind of the same girl grown up. She went to Harvard, and she's still so gentle and so sweet and very funny, and she just has never... I'm just always in awe of her, because I think she's so beautiful. She just gets prettier all the time. A lot of it's her spirit, but she's pretty. But her mom is insane looking. She's so gorgeous. So of course she's pretty, but she's also the spirit. She's just really lovely, and I feel very close to her. So and I trust her so much. I think there's a real tight relationship between us, so I cherish that, and I like being able to work with her, because there's a little bit of a shorthand and a trust that exists.
And do you think you'll ever go back to acting?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Simple answer.
I'm open to it. I'm fully open to it. Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, I'm very, I'm so occupied. I'm so pretty occupied with kids and Sweet Blackberry, and when you have kids and you're doing other things, and you get older, it just changes your relationship to it. I'm not as available to it, and I'm not interested in doing just any part anymore. You know what I mean? It's like I have other things that take priority. It's like, if I'm going to go out and audition for something, I'm going to have to get a babysitter or have somebody else watch the kids, and go halfway across town and do this and that, and then do it again for a callback. I better care about what it is I'm auditioning for. It just changes. Or if I'm going to miss meetings, or not be able to dedicate time to something else, I have to really care about it. And so it just has changed my relationship to doing it. I have to really look at what I'm doing, what I'm putting my time into.
What do you still want to achieve? Do you feel there's one or two things out there that you still want to achieve that are still on the bucket list?
I don't know. I do. Of course, there's plenty in my life that I still want to do. I write, and I would love to have more time to be doing that. There's stuff with my family. There's all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I don't want to get into it. It seems kind of touchy-feely and personal.
Fair enough. I don't want to push you. So, Karyn, thank you very much for talking to me today. It's been a great trip down memory lane. It's something that's really interesting. You're a bit different. You've gone about life. You've been in the Hollywood industry, and you've kind of gone down a different path than most people have. So, it's great to get that perspective on life. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you. It's good to connect with you.